Have you ever felt trapped in a relationship that is always draining your energy, whether it is at work, in a friendship, or even in your family? Do you feel bombarded by negative words, manipulative attitudes, and behaviors that make you depressed for no apparent reason? This is what is often referred to as a relationship with a toxic person. But how do we deal with toxic people without letting them control our emotions? Is there a smart way to stay calm and balanced when dealing with them? The answer can be found in the teachings of Stoicism, a philosophy of life that teaches us to remain calm in the face of life's challenges, including toxic people. Stoicism teaches the basic principle that we cannot control what happens outside of us, but we can always control how we respond to it. By applying this principle, we can learn to not get carried away by emotions and not let toxic people affect our mental well-being. However, this does not mean that we should ignore the person or let them act arbitrarily. There are wiser and smarter ways to deal with them. In this material, we will discuss 7 Stoic steps that can help us deal with toxic people with a cool head, without feeling stressed. Each step will provide a deeper perspective on how to maintain calm, understand self-control, and stay firm in our principles. Get ready to learn how to turn this challenge into an opportunity for growth, because sometimes our greatest enemies can be the best teachers in life. Recognizing self-control. Not everything we can change. The first step in dealing with toxic people is to recognize and accept that not everything is within our control. This is a basic tenet of Stoicism, taught by great philosophers such as Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius. They taught that we must separate what is within our control from what is beyond our control. In the context of dealing with toxic people, this is especially important to understand. Toxic people with their negative behavior or attitudes may make us feel upset, angry, or even depressed. However, we must realize that we cannot change who they are or how they act. Their behavior is part of their own decision, and we have no power to force change on them. What we can control, however, is how we respond to their attitudes and behavior. Stoicism teaches us to focus on ourselves, on what is within our control. Instead of feeling frustrated that we can't change others, we can choose to change our attitude. For example, if someone is constantly criticizing us or trying to make us feel bad, we have the choice to not be affected by their words. We can choose to stay calm and not let the comments shake our self-confidence. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote in his personal journal, "It is not what happens to us that matters, but how we respond to it." In other words, the situations or behaviors of toxic people do not determine our happiness. Rather, how we respond to those situations is what will determine the quality of our lives. One practical way to start applying this principle is to reflect on yourself every time you interact with a toxic person. Ask yourself, can I change their attitude? The answer is definitely no. However, can I choose not to let them affect my emotions? The answer is yes. By remembering this Stoic principle, we can be wiser in dealing with toxic people, not get carried away by emotions, and maintain our inner peace. Understanding emotional reactions. Controlling reactions, not situations. Once we recognize that we cannot change a toxic person's behavior, the next step is to learn how to manage our emotional reactions. Stoicism teaches that our emotions are not something that just comes naturally to us. Instead, we have the power to choose how we respond to situations and our feelings. Mastering our emotional reactions is key to staying calm when dealing with toxic people. Emotions often arise spontaneously, especially when we feel threatened, hurt, or insulted. However, Stoicism teaches that emotions are a product of our thoughts, and we can change them by changing the way we think. For example, if someone criticizes us excessively or attacks our character, our first reaction is often to feel angry or offended. However, we can pause, take a deep breath, and realize that we don't have to respond to those emotions right away. Marcus Aurelius in Meditations advises us to always examine our thoughts before we act. If you are disturbed by external things, be disturbed not by them, but by your view of them. This means that if we feel angry at the behavior of a toxic person, it is not a result of their behavior, but of the way we see and interpret it. One way to practice this self-control is to adopt a technique called cognitive reframing. This is a technique where we change the way we view situations that make us emotional. For example, when someone who is toxic tries to hurt our feelings with harsh words, we can choose to see the situation not as a personal attack, but as a reflection of the person's unhappiness or inability to manage their own feelings. By changing our perspective, we can keep our emotions stable. Instead of feeling angry or disappointed, we can feel sorry or unbothered by their behavior. This doesn't mean we let them do whatever they want, but we choose not to give the person the power to control our emotions. We control our reactions, and that is real power. Mastering emotional reactions is the key to freeing ourselves from the negative influence of toxic people. By practicing Stoicism, we learn to become wiser, more patient, and more resilient to emotional disturbances caused by others. Setting boundaries. Choosing not to get caught up. The next step in dealing with toxic people is to set clear and firm boundaries. In Stoicism, we are taught to maintain our inner peace by limiting things that can damage our mental health. One of the best ways to do this is by learning to say no and setting healthy boundaries, especially with people who consistently give off negative energy. One of the Stoic teachings that is relevant here is the understanding that our time and energy are extremely valuable. As the Roman Stoic philosopher Seneca once wrote, "Our time is the only thing we have that we cannot get back. Therefore, we need to be wise in choosing who we give our attention and energy to." If we consistently allow toxic people to dictate how we feel or act, we are giving them control over our time and energy, which should only be ours. These boundaries are not just about avoiding negative interactions, but also about maintaining a healthier quality of relationships with those around us. By setting boundaries, we let people know that certain behaviors are unacceptable, and that we will not allow ourselves to be caught up in their manipulative games or destructive behaviors. However, setting boundaries does not mean we have to be confrontational or aggressive. Stoicism teaches us to remain calm, patient, and thoughtful in all our actions. This means that we can firmly but respectfully state what we find unacceptable. For example, if someone is constantly criticizing us or speaking to us in a disrespectful manner, we can calmly say, "I would prefer not to continue this conversation if you are speaking like that." Of course, this takes practice and courage, especially when we are afraid of disappointing others or facing conflict. But by remembering the Stoic principle that we can only control our reactions to the outside world, we can learn not to feel guilty or anxious about setting boundaries to protect ourselves. Setting clear boundaries allows us to conserve our energy and peace of mind, while still respecting ourselves and maintaining healthy relationships with others. Boundaries are not selfish acts, but rather wise ones that support our long-term well-being. Accepting imperfection, keeping an open mind. When dealing with toxic people, it's often tempting to feel frustrated or even hate them. However, Stoicism teaches us to accept that everyone, including toxic people, is part of an imperfect world. This means we must learn to not get caught up in the perfection we expect from others, and accept that every individual has their own limitations and shortcomings. Marcus Aurelius in his Meditations wrote, "What is bad for the bee colony is bad for nature. Likewise, what is bad for man does not harm the order of the universe." This reminds us that toxic people, while their behavior may be harmful to us, are not actually a threat to the order of the universe as a whole. They are simply part of a larger system and do not necessarily have bad intentions. They may be acting out of their own unhappiness, ignorance, or bad experiences. Accepting these imperfections is an important step in maintaining inner peace. Rather than responding with anger or hatred, we can try to see toxic people with more empathy. Maybe they are going through difficulties in their lives, or maybe they are stuck in negative thought patterns that are difficult to change. With this understanding, we can be more patient and not immediately affected by their behavior. Additionally, embracing imperfection also teaches us not to take every interaction with a toxic person as permanent. Everyone has the right to grow and change, and perhaps their current behavior reflects an unconscious or immaturity that they will one day realize and correct. We don't have to force change on them, but we can choose not to let their behavior disturb our peace of mind. Of course, this doesn't mean we should let toxic people continue to harm us, but by having a broader understanding of human imperfection, we can learn to stay calm and not get caught in emotional traps. We can see them as part of their own journey, without having to drag ourselves too deeply into their problems. By accepting the imperfections in others, we can more easily maintain our emotional balance and not get caught up in the negative feelings they cause. This allows us to focus on more positive things and prioritize our own inner peace. Turning challenges into lessons, finding wisdom in adversity. When dealing with toxic people, we often feel like we're stuck in a no-win situation. We feel attacked, humiliated, or even treated unfairly. However, Stoicism teaches us to see every challenge as an opportunity for growth, not as an obstacle. It teaches us to turn adversity into a lesson and to find wisdom in every experience, even the most difficult ones. Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher, said, "We cannot choose our circumstances, but we can choose how we respond to them." When dealing with toxic people, we may not be able to choose how they act or what they say. However, we always have a choice about how we respond. Our reaction to a toxic person's behavior is the greatest lesson we can learn. In every situation, there is an opportunity to strengthen our character, test our patience, and grow our wisdom. One way to apply this principle is to ask yourself after interacting with a toxic person, what can I learn from this experience? Maybe it's a lesson about how to stay calm in a stressful situation. Maybe it's a lesson about the importance of setting firm boundaries and taking care of ourselves in difficult situations. Every interaction with a toxic person can be an opportunity to improve ourselves. Stoicism also teaches us not to view ourselves as victims of the situations we find ourselves in. Instead, we are the ones in control of how we choose to act. When we encounter toxic people, we can see it as a test of our resilience and wisdom. With this perspective, we can not only survive a difficult situation, but also grow through the experience. For example, if someone toxic tries to make us feel bad about ourselves, we can use that experience to practice our self-confidence and assertiveness. We learn not to let their opinions define who we are. In the process, we become stronger, wiser, and more resilient to external influences. By turning these challenges into opportunities for growth, we can see toxic people not as threats, but as a means to test and improve ourselves. This allows us to maintain inner peace and focus on our personal journey towards wisdom. Maintaining inner peace, not getting carried away by negative emotions. One of the core teachings of Stoicism is maintaining inner peace, especially in situations of conflict or tension. Toxic people often test our ability to remain calm and balanced. They can create an environment filled with drama, anxiety, and negative energy, which, if we're not careful, can affect the way we think and feel. Therefore, maintaining inner peace in dealing with toxic people is not easy, but it is essential. In Stoicism, there is a teaching that true happiness comes from within ourselves, not from external circumstances. Epictetus emphasized that no one can make us angry without our permission. This means that even though toxic people may try to provoke us, we still have complete control over how we respond. If we allow them to draw us into conflict or drama, we have surrendered our inner peace to them. Instead, by maintaining emotional distance and choosing to remain calm, we maintain control over ourselves. To maintain inner peace, the first step is to recognize that we cannot control the actions of others. However, we can always control how we respond. When someone tries to draw us into an argument or conflict, we can choose not to engage, or at least not to let ourselves be carried away by their negative emotions. Responding calmly and rationally is one of the best ways to maintain inner peace. In addition, maintaining inner peace also means understanding that we cannot please everyone. Toxic people often try to play with our feelings, make us feel guilty, or manipulate us into doing what they want. However, by remembering that we are not responsible for other people's feelings, we can learn not to feel burdened by their demands. This is not selfish, but rather a wise act of self-protection. One Stoic technique that is particularly useful in this situation is negative visualization, which involves imagining the worst possible scenario. By preparing our minds for the worst possible scenario, we can reduce the feeling of anxiety or shock when it happens. For example, we can imagine how we would remain calm and unaffected if a toxic person criticized us or tried to hurt us. With this practice, we strengthen our mental resilience and maintain inner peace, no matter what is happening outside of us. By continuing to maintain inner peace, we not only protect ourselves from the negative impacts of toxic people, but also develop into a wiser person who is more resilient to the pressures of life. Bottom of form. Accepting yourself, not being affected by other people's judgments. The final step in dealing with toxic people is to accept ourselves without relying on the judgment or opinions of others. In Stoicism, we are taught that happiness and inner peace come from within, and nothing is more important than maintaining our integrity and self-esteem. Toxic people often try to undermine our self-esteem with unconstructive criticism or negative comments. But we don't have to be bothered by them if we have built a strong foundation of accepting ourselves as we are. One Stoic teaching that is relevant here comes from Epictetus, who said, No one can insult you without your permission. That is, other people's judgments only have the power to affect us if we let them. Toxic people may try to make us feel small or inadequate, but if we don't allow their judgments to determine our worth, we remain whole and undisturbed. To begin to accept ourselves fully, we need to practice being less attached to the opinions of others. In many cases, toxic people try to judge us based on their narrow views or their desire to control us. But if we realize that their judgments are irrelevant to who we really are, we can more easily free ourselves from their influence. This means we don't have to prove ourselves to them or seek their approval. Instead, Stoicism teaches us to focus more on what really matters, living according to our values, developing virtues, and growing as individuals. Marcus Aurelius in Meditations advises us not to let others shake our principles. Let no one's opinion dictate how you live. This means that even though toxic people may try to judge us or criticize us, we can still choose to stay true to ourselves. Self-acceptance also involves the ability to see our flaws without feeling ashamed or disturbed by them. Stoicism teaches us to accept that we are all imperfect beings, and that failure or weakness is part of the journey of life. By accepting our less than perfect sides, we can be more tolerant of the weaknesses of others, including toxic people, without feeling threatened or anxious. In this way, we not only protect ourselves from the negative impact of toxic people, but also strengthen our self-confidence and develop inner peace. When we fully accept ourselves, we are no longer affected by other people's judgments and can stay on track, even if there are people who try to disturb our balance. Conclusion. Dealing with toxic people is not easy, but by adopting the principles of Stoicism, we can learn to remain calm and thoughtful in every interaction. By understanding that we cannot control other people's behavior, but we can always control how we respond, we begin to build stronger mental resilience. By setting clear boundaries, embracing imperfection, and seeing challenges as opportunities for growth, we can maintain our emotional balance and happiness. Stoicism teaches that true happiness comes from within ourselves, not from external conditions or the judgments of others. Therefore, maintaining inner peace and accepting ourselves completely is the key to dealing with toxic people without getting carried away by their negative emotions. When we are no longer affected by criticism or manipulation, we can stay true to our values and continue to grow as wiser and more resilient individuals in the face of life's pressures. By implementing these steps, we not only protect ourselves from the negative influence of toxic people, but also build inner strength that allows us to be wiser in every decision and interaction. In every difficult situation, we always have the choice to stay calm, learn from the experience, and continue to strive to be the best version of ourselves.